Believe me, you do not want to miss this one. Up in Max, there was a guy we all called Crazy Dave. And yeah, if you guessed correctly, he was a few bananas short of a bundle. A ton of guys in the can had mental illnesses. And in all honesty, they shouldn't have been there. They needed to be in facilities where they could get the care that they really needed. Throwing them in the general population wasn't doing them, other inmates, the guards, anybody. Wasn't doing anybody any favors. Having a country-strong, paranoid schizophrenic around a bunch of violent criminals in a confined space is absolutely not the recipe for success. And that's precisely who Crazy Dave was. He knew what he was all about. Lifting weights bigger than his body and talking to the voices in his head over in the corner of the yard. Very few people went near him. Even less were able to hold down anything that resembled a conversation. He had this way about him where he would get super agitated talking to guys if they couldn't get on his program. And then he would cut you off permanently. However, I happened to crack that code when we were in the small yard one winter lifting weights. Up in the mountains of western Maryland, it would get really cold. And a lot of guys would skip yard, they would forego it and stay inside because it was just too brutal. It happened to be on one of those days that I went out to push some pig iron with about 4 or 5 other guys total in the small yard. With so few people outside, Crazy Dave ended up approaching me and asked me to give him a spot while he was on the bench. Not that he needed it at all. Now he was maybe 180 pounds soaking wet, but he was pushing 325 on the bench for reps, sets of 10 or more. It was in between sets I found myself talking with him. Dave would look at you when you spoke, but as soon as he finished and waited for your reply, he would turn his head in the other direction. I picked up on that and his body language and started to do the same. When I would speak to him, I would look directly and then I would turn away when it was his turn to talk. This was his code, this is how I cracked it, and this was how I was able to speak to him when nobody else could. After I figured it out, he spoke with me more than pretty much anybody in the entire housing unit. Fast forward to a few months later. It was a Friday night. I remember it vividly because I was making a hookup in my cell like I did every week. It was my little way of rewarding myself for making it Friday to Friday without having got sent out of the jail for something or getting sent to lockup for anything that could have happened. As I'm cooking, I start to hear a cell above us being shaken down by the COs. Business as usual in the hoosegow, just another night. After about 10 minutes, there was the sound of keys running back and forth. If you don't know, that's the giveaway sound of the guards, usually en route to a code. 1010 was the code that they would call, and every available CO would scramble towards the direction of whatever incident was popping off at that time. We could always tell where the incident was because we would hear keys running in a certain direction. Sometimes you'd be like, oh, there's something popping off in the chow hall. Or, hey, sounds like they're running to housing unit 5. Or they're going over to lockup. So when you hear keys, you know what it means. This one happened to be pretty much directly above our cell. And I quickly told my bunk buddy, I said, hey man, I'm pretty sure Crazy Dave is fighting the police. So as I'm hearing the sound of this scuffle making its way towards the front of the tier, where the staircase is, I'm looking out the crack of my cell all the way down, and I see Crazy Dave come running down the steps. Sure enough, it was him. The police had his t-shirt in one hand, trying to hold him, can of pepper spray in the other, just spraying him in the face the whole time. And Dave is just pulling him like a team of oxen down the steps. That's not super uncommon, but what he did and said next was the stuff of legends. While he was getting sprayed down, he rips this shirt off like a pro wrestler and made a beeline for the shower. I heard the water kick on, and it was less than 10 seconds later, he came out of that shower. Fists up, and what he said next I will never forget. Ding ding, round 2. At this point, he had just sprayed the mace off inside the shower and proceeded to give this guard a 3-piece with a side of biscuits and slaw. It didn't take but a few more moments until the G Squad was surrounding him. They had him down and cuffed. Those boys picked him up like a log, started to carry him out of the building, handcuffed, foot shackled, and the whole time Crazy Dave is just yelling, They tried to kill me! And that was the last time I saw Crazy Dave. I'm pretty sure they took him to Supermax in Baltimore, from what I heard. And I think he ended up catching a street charge for fighting the police. After the dust settled, we learned a little bit of the details of the incident, talked to some guys that were on the top tier, and they said, man, nobody tried to kill him. They found like a little bit of tobacco on him, and he just had a zap out. What would have been honestly like maybe a cell restriction ticket, no big deal. He turned it into a major altercation because he decided to Spartan kick one of the guards in the chest. That was what went down before I saw him come flying down the steps and do his whole shower, rinse off, ding ding, round two spiel. That made for probably the most interesting Friday night I had in the joint. But even to this day, all these years later, I still think about him from time to time. And I really hope that he found the help that he needed. Throw me a follow for more prison content.